Well, good afternoon. I am Joan Benz, the program coordinator for Sharp Again Naturally. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for Managing Transitions in Aging and Cognition. Before we begin our conversation, I wanted to give you a brief program update. We have 3 foundational coaching groups open for registration. Our next session begins April 21st, and we have only 2 spots open for that. Our June session is scheduled for early evening, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Time, to accommodate those who have work days that end later, or as well as people in earlier time zones. I will be sending links to our website with all the details, but in a nutshell, the Stay Sharp coaching program offers a unique opportunity for those looking to preserve their cognition or who are beginning to notice lapses in their memory so that they can take a more active role in enhancing their brain health. Working with professional health coach and a small peer group, participants identify and begin to modify lifestyle factors that may be impacting their brain health. They learn from one another's experiences and acquire the tools needed to strengthen their cognition. Included in the program are 2 private consultations with our health coach, 6 75-minute coaching calls via Zoom, a comprehensive manual and workbook to help you stay on track, and access to an online assessment to measure core elements of your cognition. The fee for our foundational program is significantly subsidized through the generosity of Sharp Again Naturally's donors. The cost of the program is nominal compared to the actual cost of $450, so an enormous value. Let me change that. Our next Stay Sharp webinar is Wednesday, April 19th at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Penelope McDonald joins us again for Better Food Equals Better Detox, for a deep dive into diet, discussing the specific foods that positively impact our ability to detox and those that impair the process. So again, thank you for joining us. I don't know why I can't do that. For joining us for Managing Transitions in Aging and Cognition. Briefly, we would like to note that the information in this presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Our information is intended to empower individuals, their families, and healthcare professionals who want to collaborate in the most effective ways on this journey to health and well-being. Please see a licensed and qualified medical professional for your medical needs. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers and moderator. So if you open in gallery view, you'll see us. So Debbie Drelich is the founder of New York Elder Care Consultants, LLC, an aging life care consultation practice that provides assessment, advocacy, and care management of older adults. She has seen firsthand the challenges faced by clients suffering from dementia and their caregivers. Debbie received her master's degree in social work from the Hunter College School of Social Work, as well as a postmaster's degree in individual treatment. Debbie serves on the board of Sharp Again Naturally. Stacey Zaslow-Cook has worked as a geriatric social worker for over 30 years, and for the past 2 years, she is the owner of Aging Smart. She earned a BS degree from Rochester Institute of Technology and her MSW from New York University. Stacey has worked at different hospitals as a geriatric social worker, coordinating safe discharges into the community. And Steve Ledvina joins us as our moderator. He is a nationally board certified health and wellness coach and Sharp Again's board chair. In his coaching practice, he works with individuals to implement lifestyle changes to prevent dementia, maintain their cognition, and improve the quality of life. So thank you for joining us, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Thank you, Joan, for that great introduction and for all the good info on the upcoming programming.
I'll be emailing that to all of our registrants as well.
Perfect. And just a reminder for everyone, obviously feel free to take furious notes, but you'll also be receiving a recording of this presentation after. So if there's anything you want to look back on, you'll have that in the next few days. And I'd also invite people as we walk through today to just put questions in the chat. I'll be trying to keep track of those and ask follow-up questions and things of both Debbie and Stacey as we work through. But for now, I think with just the wealth of information that both Debbie and Stacey have, I'd love to just open up the floor to you two to just talk about some important considerations that you think we should have when managing transitions.
Okay, hi, I'm Stacey, and I think, we're going to start with stages of different cognitive impairments. Okay, so there are 7 different stages that I have identified, and we've done some research. The first 3 are mostly pre-dementia stages. I'm going to talk about them, and some of them start to have some symptoms of dementia. The first stage would be the no cognitive decline, which is usually identified in research, and that could last for years, it can last for decades, and usually there's no exhibits of any signs at this point. The second stage is age-associated memory impairments, and this is mostly forgetting where you put things, forgetting the names of familiar things, just here and there, not all the time, and normal age-related cognitive decline. Just very basic, like you forgot your keys somewhere, or you left somewhere else. With all this being said, also, I just want to express that you also have to make sure that you are getting enough sleep. So this doesn't mean you're having dementia. You're getting enough sleep, you're on the right medication, nothing is all mixed together and making you a little bit more forgetful at times. The third stage, which is mild cognitive impairments, okay? Because the fourth stage is also mild, but mild dementia. So the mild cognitive impairments, which is also called MCI, so you might hear that term used, abbreviation for mild cognitive impairments. And this is getting lost a little bit more frequently. Maybe starting to notice a little bit of impairments at work or forgetting things a little more often, but not severely, but just having some difficulty concentrating or thinking about things, or follow through all the time. And so that would be stage 3, which is mild cognitive impairment. And just remember, the first 3 stages are pre-dementia stages. So these are sometimes normal aging things that are going on in your life. Stage 4, which is now mild dementia opposed to mild cognitive impairment, okay? This is like you're starting to see more signs. Maybe somebody's becoming socially withdrawn. Their moods are starting to change. Their personality is starting to change. They're getting a little frustrated because they can't do what they maybe thought they could do. And they're also denying the symptoms, right? So they're not aware, or they are a little bit aware, but they're in denial. Maybe their thoughts are not as organized as before. They can't always find the right words, or they might start to use words like, your friend, instead of saying Mary or Lisa. They might say my friend or my husband. So you might start seeing some of these things in mild dementia. My husband opposed to my, saying his name, or my daughter or your granddaughter. More problems with difficulty problem solving, avoiding challenging situations. Short-term memory is starting to go a little bit more now. A little bit more disorientation. And I'm going to go back to the changes in mood. Somebody might become more angry or frustrated or sad because maybe they are recognizing something's going on. So they might become a little depressed. So their mood and personality might be changing at this point. Less social, especially not wanting to be around a lot of people, because being around a lot of people now is so many different conversations going on, you can't focus. Smaller groups might be better for somebody who's starting to show mild dementia. The next stage, which would be moderate dementia, this is they're having poor judgment at this point. Maybe they're walking across the street when they're not looking. They're thinking, oh, I could just do this, and they don't realize how many cars are coming. Or judgment, maybe this is a time to start thinking about not driving because their judgment is a little bit, is not as good as it was before. They might need some assistance in their everyday activities, maybe reminders to go brush your teeth, you didn't eat. Water is another thing, reminder about drinking more fluids. Somebody might become a little bit more disoriented to time and place. The main sign for stage 5 is you're not remembering as many details, especially with families, their names, your close friends, maybe an address or a phone number. So this is more moderate dementia. Forgetting information about yourself, maybe not remembering your address or how old you are, where you live, or maybe even as stuff like your social security, which you knew all your life, and now all of a sudden this is harder to remember. They might need some assistance with toileting and showering for moderate stages. This is where I feel like there's going to be there's more significant changes. The next stage would be more of a moderate severe dementia. So now somebody's starting to forget names of children or your spouse. And now it's not coming in and out as much. Like, oh, sometimes I might say my husband's name, sometimes I might not. Now it's more, he's my husband or my daughter or my granddaughter or my grandson, because the names are not coming as clear. So this is moderate severe dementia. Somebody might need full-time care if it's not a spouse living with them or a sibling or child. They might need some home care at this point, or maybe going to any kind of day program for adults. They might have some delusional or obsessive behavior for moderately severe dementia, anxiety. So when I say more of delusional or obsessive, sometimes people with moderately severe dementia might think somebody's coming in the house and stealing stuff. They might hide things in the corner somewhere and nobody could find it. People are coming through the window and they're trying to hide stuff, money, maybe clothes even. They start hiding things that we don't think are that important, but because they're having some kind of delusional behavior now, food might be hidden in places too. And forgetting spouses' names or even language might be declining at this point. Maybe referring to things as that thing over there, which they're referring to the food in the refrigerator, or I know I want to go to a place where maybe I eat. So these things are starting to happen. The language is starting to decline. And severe dementia is like loss of motor skills. And this is like the final stage. The brain seems to lose connection with the body. And then just so you know, like every situation is different. So the moderate and moderately severe could overlap, and the severe and the moderate could overlap. And the mild dementia and the mild impairments may overlap. So those are the 7 stages.
Yeah, and how, Debbie, if you could talk about, she was sort of mentioning all the different stages, how everything's different, every family situation is different. How would you manage all those different, family situations as well?
So family situations at times can be super complicated and add many extra additional levels of stress, even for families that live close. Stacey and I work with people who, in some situations, there may be no family or the family may be very, very far away. But again, even if someone is close by, I think it's really important for everyone to remember that you can't be there all the time. It's okay if you're not. It's something that you have to embrace, that you can't be everything for the older adult that's dealing with dementia. We do need to make sure that, that they are safe. We do need to make sure that they're getting what they need, but one person probably can't do it all. We usually, have seen situations, in families, whether they're close or far, but where it's helpful to start with the family meeting and by family may not necessarily mean son, daughter. There are families of choice that it could be a neighbor, could be a niece, a nephew, a dear friend. Sometimes what worked in the past, like some of the old decisions making patterns in a family, may not work anymore with a more, severe or mid-stage dementia diagnosis of the older adult. So there may be some very tough decisions that have to be made, and there may have to be some sharing of critical decisions. And some family members may be better than others. For example, it may be that someone in the family is a medical person, like let's say a nurse or a doctor, and they may be the best person to interface with the doctors who are involved or the caregivers who are involved. But you may have another child or niece or nephew or neighbor who are in finance or an accountant, and they may be a good one to take on the responsibility of bill payment. So to kind of figure out exactly who's going to be good at what and who's going to do what, and this is probably the time to have a unified front. Again, these old patterns of, well, you are my, and I've had, believe it or not, I've had these conversations where you can almost envision, I'm thinking of a particular family, there was a disabled son and 2 daughters who were really very successful medical professionals. And if I closed my eyes for a minute, I can envision the 2 of them pulling each other's pigtails, having a rumble in the middle of the living room, 50 years or, earlier, where these old fights, well, mom always liked you better and you were the favorite and he was disabled. Well, it's like, okay, everyone, let's reset, take a deep breath. This is not going to be helpful to mom. Let's figure out who can do what. Try and get buy-in on a plan, which is often hard, to come up with what's going to be best from everyone. And sometimes that's where it's good to plan ahead. And I talk about this in a lot of places about planning ahead when you're well, when you're my age, when you're Steve's age, when you're Stacey's age, plan ahead. Who would you want to make your healthcare decisions for you? Who would you want to handle your finances? Is it the daughter who was never good with money, or is it the son, the accountant, who shares the same philosophical, spiritual, religious kind of opinions on end of life issues as you do? And if nothing else, make sure you tell them what you want while you're able to. So don't wait to that really advanced stage that Stacey was describing, and then the family are like, I don't know what mom would want. I don't know. give your relatives a gift of letting them know what you want by planning ahead and sharing these uncomfortable conversations. 100%. Who wants to talk about, well, gee, when I'm severely, impaired with cognitive loss, or I'm, God forbid, dying of cancer, that's not really the best time for those conversations. So, I think that it's, even though distance can be challenging, I remember I had a client who had only one son. He lived in Switzerland. He was a banker there. And do you know that this was like pre-FaceTime and Zoom, but every doctor's appointment that I went with her to, we patched him in on the phone. So he was an active part of her day-to-day needs and medical decisions through technology. Now it's even easier. This is good 12 years ago, that case. So with a little strategic planning and a bit of a team effort, if possible, you can make sure that your loved one is getting the support that they need. The other part of it, which I just want to mention in our introduction to this, is it's very important to look at the person's financial situation, because we can come up with a beautiful, brilliant care plan that we think will make such a difference for Mr. Jones, Mrs. Schwartz, whoever the older adult is. But it's really important to know exactly what their finances are. Are they going to be able to pay for this type of care? Or do we need to look more towards government entitlements, which is a whole other long conversation? Figure out what it would cost to keep this person at home realistically in your regional area so that you can plan ahead. Think about the costs of caregivers. Think about, I always bring up an example of my old house. I live in a house that's over 100 years old. This will not be the place, if I become disabled, that I will be able to live out my life. There's a flight of steps to get to the first floor. My bedroom is on the 3rd floor. This would not work. We need to think about that. But maybe if we put a chairlift or two in, I could stay there. Again, plan ahead, think ahead. Think about things, by the way, review their finances. Think about maybe the family can assist a little bit. But like I remember I had a client who, she herself never had kids, but was very close with her nieces and nephews. And each of them that were able to actually contributed towards helping to pay for her care. It was important to them. One couldn't have done it all, but a little bit each of them were able to do. And that's what sustained her to stay at home, until the end. Again, find out, does the person have long-term care insurance? I've met a lot of retired teachers that forgot that they purchased this and have paid for it for years. And that's a great source of, paying for care. So, we would want to have these families think about this. And the last thing that I just want to mention is, again, VA benefits help a little bit. Medicare, and this is just something I want to just poke at, because a lot of people believe that Medicare will pay for ongoing care of a person with dementia. And that is, we're going to debunk that one right here and now for everybody. It does not. It does not pay for chronic care. It's awesome. The Medicare program pays for doctor's visits, pays for rehab stays, pays for a short period of time after a rehab stay, but it is not for chronic care. So that's, especially true when you think about if someone has dementia, that is a chronic ailment that needs to more ongoing care. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there, because those are very important factors when the families and the caregivers are looking at decision making and planning.
So in summary, played everyone's strengths in the family. In near and far, if you're remote, you can divide and conquer tasks that can be done far away. Maybe that's some of the financial stuff or whatever.
Food online, think about it. Fresh Direct.
Right.
For those
Yeah.
in the Northeast. Mm-hmm.
And use it as an opportunity to hit the reset button on communication styles. Try and communicate fresh. Give the gift of advanced planning, and And then the finances can be really complex. And I think, hearing both of Stacey and Debbie just said, the stages can be complex, and what exactly people need in each of those stages and how to even know. And then all of the different aspects of managing those that Debbie mentioned. I'm curious, before we jump into all the other questions, who should we be looking for? What types of professionals to guide us through these processes, and how do we find them? What professional, names and things should we be looking for to even start tackling these with a little bit of extra help?
Okay, I'm happy to answer that. So I very much always advocate for a team approach, because I think people who have a team of professionals seem to have the best outcomes. So in addition to the family members and the physicians, there are people who specialize in managing care managers. So you can go to the Aging Life Care Association, which is an organization that we're part of across the country. We know resources, we can help people get resources, very important. Elder law attorneys and trust and estates attorneys are very important from the financial end to look at that. Financial advisors who are, really aware of the need for paying for care and how to maximize resources. Sometimes mediators, if it's a situation where the families are really at each other's throats, and that does happen sometimes. There are senior advisors who are professionals who are familiar with assisted living facilities all throughout, and they know what might be best for your particular person, what facing their needs. There are people who specialize in senior move management, and they sometimes can help to adapt the environment to make it more accessible and safe for the older person.
Mhm.
And should they decide that they want to, or if the family's decision is to relocate them, they can help go through, think about, how many people are living in the same house that they raised their families. So there may be lots and lots of, let's call it, stuff in the house that needs to be sorted through that would not fit in to an assisted living room or small apartment of 350 square feet. So those are the, I don't know, Stacey, can you think of anyone else? Who else did I miss on that?
Maybe like the Alzheimer's Association could also be help you with a direction. I was also thinking maybe a lot of people are going through the same situation that you might be going to, because then maybe people in your community itself, so then you could get referrals from them, and then they could share that information, and they'll give you a couple maybe, and then you can pick and choose who is the best person for you.
Right. Oh, one last thing. Across the country, in every, basically every city, you have a local area office on aging. So for example, here in New York City, it's the New York City Department for the Aging. In Westchester County, it's the Westchester Office of Senior Services, where they are aware of many, many services. And that's really across the country. So I, encourage you, if you don't know where to begin
with them.
Google Office on Aging, and they
Perfect.
should be able to help you.
That's a great number one tip to start, and then kind of gave all the other pieces of a rock star team going forward. So we talked about sort of what to do and what to look for in these transitions, but how do you even know when to intervene if you kind of notice maybe a relative or family member starting to have little signs? I think a lot of us have gone through that, where you maybe don't see somebody for a little bit, you see them again, and you're like, oh, that wasn't quite right. How do you manage that? How do you know when to intervene?
So we live very much in a society where it is not uncommon for adults to live at a distance from their adult children. It is very common. And so they may not, as you suggested, see people frequently. You know, always see an uptake after Christmas, New Year's, Passover, Easter, Thanksgiving. Those are like the big holidays that families get together, and they may observe some, little changes. But as Stacey said, some things very much are normal. And, someone occasionally forgetting their car keys, as I confess, once in a while, I'll, forget, leave it in my pocket, and whoops. Then I get panicky, like, oh my God, do I have dementia now? No, I don't think I do. Steve, you'll tell me if I do, I hope, that you'll take care of me. But so some memory loss is normal, some is not. So this is what you would want to look for, when you come in to visit, Aunt Sue over Easter, are they having a hard time planning things or problem solving things that would be kind of simple, not the world's problems, but simple kind of things of like, I don't know what to do with this, or what am I supposed to do with this tax stuff? I have no idea. I used to do it and I'm so confused. I had 2 conversations this past week with different potential clients, family members, and who were like, should we be concerned? Is the person confused about time or where they are? That's something, again, red flag, red flag. Are you seeing a change in their mood or their personality that you didn't see when you saw them over Thanksgiving, that now over Easter, all of a sudden, Aunt Sue is just not herself? Are they misplacing things all the time? As I said, a little bit is okay. Is their judgment poor? Like, are they going outside in cold weather with a light jacket when there's snow on the ground? So these are things, big one, which Stacey had pointed out earlier, was, are they withdrawing from social activities? Rather than, again, there's steps, like we don't think about it, right? If somebody invites you to their home for dinner, you might have to think about, well, how am I going to get there? Do I bring them a present? What time should I get ready to go? What should I wear? That may be hard for a person to coordinate all of those steps in their mind. And maybe they're forgetting names of people, and that's embarrassing. Like, we're all kind of built on a platform of being independent. And who wants to be seen as, oh, that's that's cousin Debbie, who's like, she's really losing it. So, it's embarrassing. So very frequently people withdraw. If you come to visit them and you see all of a sudden there's a weight loss and there's no, quote, real medical reason for them to have lost weight, again, be concerned. A big one that I always tell people to look out for is when you come to visit, if there's a stack of bills sitting on the table, including a couple of disconnect notices for the, gas and electric company, those are not things to be ignored. Those are the signs. So those are the things that are really important for you to, when it's time to intervene.
Yeah. Sure.
I would like to also add too, is that sometimes, like Debbie was saying, like the activities, they're not interested in the same activities they used to. Maybe they used to go and play cards every week, or they used to go visit their cousin every week, or go to the grocery store, and they don't want to do this anymore. They have no interest in doing this stuff because they don't know how to follow through. And it's the steps, there's too many steps. Get in the car, get to the store, get to my cousin's house. There's too many steps. They can't follow these steps anymore. More than one direction is overwhelming for them at this point. And also following a storyline, they can't follow a storyline. They might be 3 or 4 sentences before, or even they're on the story that you were talking about in the kitchen, and now you're in the family room, and they're still talking about that story, even though everybody has moved on from that, and they're just adding their point on that. And they're also struggling to adapt to change. That's a big thing. They have a really hard time with change. Well, we're not going to eat at 5 today. Mary's running late. We're going to eat at 6. This could be very overwhelming for them. They don't want to change the time. They want the structure that they're used to.
Yeah. So a lot of, maybe the overarching topic, I think maybe one of you said it at some point, but it's like disruption in any normal activities of daily living that you've seen them do before. That they were perfectly good at it at one point, and now it just seems, something is not right. They're not able to do that same thing, but not in a way that it's just, they're getting older. It's that's a quicker disruption in that thing, maybe some emotional changes, some communication changes, all those sorts of things add up, which begs the question, and I think this is probably one of the toughest things in this whole world is how do you talk to your relatives and about these changes in a constructive way? All of those changes can be really scary for the person experiencing them. So it can, and just scary to realize they're happening, scary to talk about. Maybe if they're having some of those emotional changes, it's even tougher to have a constructive conversation about them. So how do you do that? I know that that's a thing I hear all the time from people.
So
how do we do this?
I'll answer that. So, you sit down, you have a calming place. Everybody's not ganging up on the person, because even if as a healthy individual, you don't want to be ganged up on. And now you already have your defenses up, right? So they know something's going on at this early stage, and you could talk about it in small sections, like, okay, you notice the house is dirtier now. Instead of saying your house is dirty, let's just get it cleaned up. It's disgusting. That's not nice, right? We don't say that to a healthy person. You're certainly not going to say it to somebody who is starting to have memory disorder, any kind of memory disorders. So maybe a subtle way of even just talking to them about it, saying, oh, wouldn't you like some help around the house? It would be great. Maybe you could be treated like a prince or a princess. Let's get somebody to come in here and take care of you. You've been taking care of everybody all your life. You've done all the cooking, you've done all the cleaning, and now I think it's time for you to be taken care of. And how wonderful would this be? And how much would I love to have somebody come in and help me? So why don't we do this for you this time? And sometimes what I could do with some clients is say, if they're getting a little frustrated about it, sometimes you put a time limit on it. You say, okay, let's just try it for 2 months. Let's just see what happens for 2 months. And if you don't like it after 2 months, let's just talk about it again in 2 months. And especially if you're talking about it, it's early stages, hopefully they enjoy somebody making dinner for you or cleaning the house, any of these things. So this is just a different way of approaching the situation, instead of coming at them and saying, this is how it has to be. You can't do this anymore. You're not keeping a good house. Nobody wants to be spoken to that way. Nobody does. Because they're going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated. It's just going to turn into a big mess. And you don't want everybody to be angry. So I always recommend just sitting down on the same level, so everybody's talking to each other. Nobody's up higher, nobody's standing up and talking down to somebody. It's better to just talk to them about it. And then, you know what, if it's later stages and they've been managing all this time, I would still go with the same approach. Sometimes I even go with, I always say there's a back door. We just always have to find it, right? Somebody doesn't want care. It's the same thing. Just give it 2 months. Let's see what happens. They might like the companionship after a while. They might like talking to somebody who's there. Just my main thing is just don't yell at them and don't tell them you have to do it this way, because they're still the parent. And like, sometimes I go with the back door. You know what, Mom, don't do it for you, do it for me if it's later stages. She's still a mom, she's still a dad, he's still a dad, it's still an aunt or an uncle. You know what? You've always taken care of me and I'm concerned now. So why don't you could continue to take care of me? And that's just a different way of approaching it. Again, different for different people, it will work differently.
Yeah.
But sometimes saying taking care of the daughter or the son, that may make things better.
So
I
one,
think, Steve,
start,
one more quick thing
oh,
to add here, if that's okay.
many more, add as much as you want, Debbie.
I'll add a whole bunch. I think that sometimes it's also important to understand the roles in the particular family
Mhm.
and to kind of see who the best person may be to broach the subject. Like if there are, you know, more than one relative involved, it could be that, you know, mom may be more respectful to her son, the doctor, talking about some of these things than her daughter, the attorney or the nurse or whatever. It's very important to know roles and who can sometimes be, whose opinion maybe in mom's mind is more respected that way.
Mhm.
I also sometimes like to ask them if they've noticed, you know, when we're having a nice conversation, gee, have you seen anything, you know, do you think it's like, how do you think things are going? Tell me. And sometimes it gets their buy-in again, which I think is really so important. And I also think that it's very important to keep it simple, you know, so, you know, say we want we want to know what you want, you know, where would you like to live out your life? Don't make any promises, because I've had families come to me like, well, we promised mom when dad died 18 years ago that she would never have to go to a nursing home or assisted living, you know. Well, that may not be appropriate. So don't promise it at any point, because even someone with some memory loss, they're going to remember that. They're going to turn around and say, but Susie told me that she'd never place me in a nursing home. How come she wants me to go to assisted living now? You know, so, you know, better to not make these promises and better to not necessarily make long-term plans always, because they may not be, it's too much, you know. So talk about, you know, as Stacey said, and it was a great idea. You know what, let's just try this for a little while. You know, let's see what it's like to have someone making you dinner. You know, it might be kind of fun to not have to think about it, because none of us know what the future holds. And certainly when someone is losing their cognition, they surely don't know. And if anything, the future may be very frightening to them. So better to not focus on that, other than, which I will, you know, I'm a big one for planning. Again, in those early stages, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, different names in different states, but do yourself a really big favor when the person still is competent. And to be competent does not mean that you have to still be able to do it all, but that you kind of understand what's involved. Who do you want to make your medical decisions? Who do you want to make your financial decisions? And to make sure to take care of it early on, because later on, then it leads to things like guardianship and conservatorship, which are very expensive, legal and emotional.
Lengthy and very lengthy.
Very lengthy, very unpleasant kind of things.
So key takeaway we keep coming back to is start the conversation early. And I'll say, even, you know, outside of this conversation, which is very much focused on managing transitions, we at Sharpgan are so focused on the prevention. So starting the conversation earlier and earlier means you're thinking about it, but the earlier we start the conversation, the more we can do over time, make changes, make lifestyle changes and delay or, you know, even prevent onset. But just to kind of pull the big things from what you just said, what I heard was really start from a place of like empathy and equity, like trying, or equality, come to them on the same level. Make sure it's a really collaborative conversation. knowing what they want, and maybe even starting the conversation early enough that you can know how they want you to approach it, kind of what you were talking about at the end, Debbie. How do you want us, if we see these changes, how do you want us to have the conversation? And then be creative with who is delivering the message, if there's somebody who's got that perfect relationship, and how you're delivering it, if you know that they would be more receptive as a trial, or like Stacey said, if it's help me, or however that person in particular works, just try and deliver the best message in the best way possible for them. And kind of related, but I think a natural thing, but how would you recommend if somebody's feeling frustrated with the changes, just seeing that they're not remembering something or whatever it might be, how would you recommend people kind of manage that frustration that we often can see pop up around these topics?
So if the person is getting frustrated with all the changes, like I said, baby steps. You don't have to rush in and do everything and change everything at once. Baby steps. Start with something that might be the most important, but maybe just start with a small amount, even if you need some kind of home care, just baby steps. And that's how I would present it to some of the families and with the family members, is that let's start somewhere. Maybe the goal is to get them 24-hour home care, but let's start with if they could be safe at home with a few hours and people visiting. Think of a schedule. Like you don't want them to get frustrated and angry about significant changes in what the family is doing. You want them to be part of what is going on. Okay, so they say, absolutely no, I'm not taking 12 hours of home care. Maybe there's a compromise somewhere. Would it be okay if maybe 7 hours or 5 hours, as long as it's a safe situation? Right. And like I said, baby steps. I had one client who was absolutely against having home care. Nobody's coming into the house. That's it. Frustrated, angry, would follow everybody around. And, we started with a smaller amount. She was fine. The son lived there at night, wasn't around during the day. And we only started with like 4 or 5 hours for 4 days a week. And she started declining. And instead of getting her angry, they were able to, the home care agency was able to add on hours little by little. And now she's getting 10 hours, 5 days a week. And she was following her around in the beginning. She wasn't allowed to touch anything. She wasn't allowed to clean anything, but trust and getting to know. And like I said, baby steps is really a lot of what's going on. So especially if it's earlier stages, you could start with baby steps and increase it. You don't want them to get angry. You don't want the person with dementia to be angry about all the changes. You don't want to do everything at once. We're changing your doctor. We're putting in home care. We're going to look for assisted living. We're getting you a new attorney. We're cleaning your house. You can't do that. Nobody wants that done to them as a healthy individual. You're certainly not going to do this. You have to work together. Everybody collaboratively has to work together.
Yeah. Anything? That's great. Take things slow, be collaborative. Anything to add, Debbie? Otherwise, I think we'll move to the last question. So,
sure.
A big question is, and this is something we talk a lot about at Sharp Again, but if somebody starts to notice problems with their own memory, what can they start doing? What are the steps that somebody might take on their own behalf in those early stages that Stacey kind of led off with, the earliest stages?
I think just briefly, again, back to, I think we have amazing programs at Sharp Again. So to take advantage of them first and foremost, but also to have these conversations earlier on about, as we said, what does this person want? What would make them happy? And as I said, do the documents, get the legal financial stuff in order so that they can ensure that their choices are going to be made. It may not be, choice number one. I remember I had a client, lovely woman, about 4'3", tiny little woman who lived on the 4th floor of a walk-up in Chelsea in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, where she had moved in with her family. She was 98 when she died, and this was a few years before that. She had moved in when she was 12 years old with her mother and father, never married. It was the same apartment that she was raised in, and it was just not practical. And she became more confused and more physically frail, and it was really important to have that conversation with her earlier on of, okay, you want to stay here, we can do this for now. Just like if someone is starting to see changes and signs, we want to enhance your experience. We can't sleep at night. Daughter Susie, can't sleep at night knowing that you're not paying your bills. Would you let me help you with that? Or can I get you someone, a daily money manager, to help you make sure your bills are being paid? Okay, Stacey said baby steps. Next, can we get you Meals on Wheels? I see you've lost a lot of weight. That might be something nice, for you. Okay, next step, maybe a part-time person. So just early on to put in the steps, and build slowly on top until, unfortunately, people may need or not extensive support.
Well, and what I'm hearing too is targeting a lot of the help towards maintaining those healthy lifestyle factors too, making sure stress is at a manageable low level. If there's overwhelm around things that are, whatever it might be just work. And at the beginning, if you're having little bits of memory problems, or later it might be things like bills, or if you notice that food or social activity are declining, nutrition or social activity, helping facilitate those things, and but really finding new ways of making sure that those really healthy habits stay there, because the longer and stickier we can make all those really healthy lifestyle factors, the healthier all of us are going to stay cognitively for the long term. With that, I haven't seen any questions in the chat, so I'm just going to open up just to encourage anyone to add a question to the chat, or if anyone has one to just shout out. You can raise your hand, or if you have one, feel free to take yourself off mute.
Steve, I have one that we didn't talk about.
Perfect.
If this is of interest to anyone, is what happens when family members, we had spoken about this one before or earlier when we met on our own, are at odds with each other. And I think that's a really important one, to talk about, because sometimes, again, old habits, picture my clients and these two girls like pulling the ponytails, old habits don't go away very easily. So the arguments could be about who's doing more, who's doing less, who's spending more, who's showing up more. Remember that not everyone can be right, and sometimes there needs to be compromise, I think is really important. Sometimes things are they're just stuck and we can go no further. And that's when it's good to bring in a neutral party, whether it's maybe it's like, and I've had this happen, people are like, listen, my brother thinks one thing, I think something else, our sister thinks something else. Can you come meet mom and tell us what you think? Can mom stay at home? What does she need to stay at home? What, now and in the future, what can we do to make our house safer? So sometimes we'll come in just to come in and meet mom, say what we think would be safer for the home. Again, the neutral party could be an attorney to talk about the costs and do those advanced directives that we spoke about, the healthcare and legal financial decision making. And you know what? Maybe consult with their doctor. We didn't mention that before, but sometimes doctors are a really good, sometimes they're not, but sometimes they're a really good resource to kind of weigh in on what a person needs, and they may be, the older adult may be more respectful of, well, my long-term Dr. Smith, who's known me for 25 years, is saying I need a little help. Okay, that I'll accept that more maybe than my daughter who is the nag, you know. Those are just important. That was just something else. If people are at loggerheads, you know, it's hard. Everyone has a point of view in these situations, but very important to keep in mind. Anyway, that's it.
That's perfect. I mean, I think that's probably one of the stickiest issues that people often encounter, right? Everyone, you know, everyone's an adult in that situation at that point, right? But so everyone has an opinion, and it can get very complex very fast. So relying on some professionals or finding some third party that's a great idea. Stacey, any final closing thoughts to add?
No, I agree. It's the group, you know, the collaboration, getting everybody together. And, you know, sometimes older generations look at their doctors for that direction, opposed to their daughter, who could also be a doctor, or their son who's a doctor, but the doctor who's been taking care of them for 30 years is the doctor that knows everything. So if that's where you have to go and they're not listening to the family, collaborate with whoever you can to get on board.
Yeah.
Marilyn has a question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. One thing I wanted to comment on, and I did talk to my daughters about this, because I've had two friends that have, or three actually, that have had stages of dementia, and then, you know, that have gotten worse until, you know, that they've had to go to nursing homes. And one of the things that's really bothers me is when somebody asks repeatedly, okay, what time is my dentist appointment? What time? And they, you know, obsess about time and dates. So, you know, I would always just repeat it. I just say, oh, that's right, it's on Tuesday. I've heard, like, my cousin, oh, it drives me crazy. Mom, I just told you yesterday, your appointment's at 4. And I'm like, oh, don't do that. Just say it. Just say it. If they keep repeating it, just, you know, instead of yelling at them that you just said it, you know, whatever they ask, just pretend it's the first time they asked it. So that's just something I've kind of learned, and it's so much easier.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, Marilyn. It's really approaching it and realizing they're not doing it on purpose. It's not nothing they're doing on purpose, and approaching with empathy. Yeah, Stacey.
So something that might be helpful when this is going on is maybe have a book or calendar that is a go-to book. And you start it when early stages, or even when you're just starting to see symptoms. I mean, I have a go-to book now that I find everything in. I know that it's always there. So if you get a black marble book and you just say, this is the book. I'm not saying this is going to stop everything, but Mom, here's the book. It says Tuesday at 10 o'clock. That's when your doctor's appointment is. So maybe that would help, or having a whiteboard on a place that is a very common area, the kitchen, the dining room, or where she's eating, and say, put up a big calendar, a whiteboard and a calendar, and mark the day or circle the day it is if somebody's in the house, and this is what we're doing today, and have a list of what's going on today. And maybe once you get into a routine, or they get into a routine of seeing it over or using it over and over again, then you know that's a spot. And this is not going to stop everything, but this might help if somebody get less frustrated. Like, you know, they know that the board's there. They know that the calendar, oh, what do I have going on today? And looking into the calendar or the book, and just remind them that you have the book. Maybe that's another way of going about it, instead of somebody getting frustrated, repeating it, and you could see the book.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, I don't know if, no, this is not going to work very well.
Doesn't
No.
like that.
One of my favorite products, if you can Google at Amazon, is called an Alzheimer's clock. And basically what it's about yay big.
Yep.
And it'll say on it, the one that they have here says Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m., February 4th, 2023. So this is also very helpful if a person has some sleep disorders at night and they wake up at 3 in the morning wide awake. you know, if you have, I've had clients have like 3 of these in their house, one in their dining room, one next to their bed, one in their living room where they sit. So if they wake up like at 3 in the morning and they roll over at certain stages, they may say, oh, gee, it's 3:30 a.m. I guess I need to go back to sleep. And that can help orientate them along with the whiteboard and that book, which is really useful.
Yeah, really good. Really good. I think what Marilyn said and what you both said is kind of all parts of the same piece. One, no, and I think Christy and Andrea just added really good thoughts too. Assume good intention. Assume that the person who's experiencing memory problems isn't asking because they're trying to be annoying. They're asking because they genuinely don't remember, and approaching that with empathy, and then using tools like the book or the clock to make it so that they have a place that they can reliably go to for the information and feel self-sufficient. And then Andrea also mentioned, and I think this is probably a good lesson for just life, not when just dealing with people with dementia, but that just listening is important, and often to want to not just be fixed, not just solutions, or how do we fix this? It's just hearing the experience of the person who's having some memory issues. So thank you, Marilyn and Andrea and Christy. I think those are excellent thoughts to add.
And it takes a lot less energy to be kind than it does to be angry and frustrated.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Well, thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you so much to Debbie and Stacey for lending us your expertise. It's really so helpful to hear from people who, are kind of in the middle of many families day in, day out, seeing how this plays out and knowing what's best to do. So thank you so much. I think I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else here did. A number of people mentioned that in the chat, so thank you.
And I will upload the recording to our YouTube channel and get the link out to everyone, along with the resources and links to things that were mentioned today.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Okay.
hopefully we'll see you all next time at the Better Food Equals Better Detox.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
And bye.